You're listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Now, it is time to break it down.
Welcome to episode number 48 of the Sonny Brown Breakdown. I'm your host, Sonny Brown, and in this episode, I talk to John ʀᴏᴏᴡ. Now, John is one of the all-time legends of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and martial arts, especially here in Australia, where he was the first person to receive their black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and of course, one of the first non-Brazilians to receive their black belt around the world. He's got a wealth of experience and knowledge when it comes to jiu-jitsu and all fighting arts. He is the head of my association. My coach is Anthony Lange and his coach is John ʀᴏᴏᴏ. So it was an honor to get to speak to him. Now, of course, with such a wide variety of things to talk about with John, I really wanted to focus in, of course, on the teaching and learning aspects, what we do focus on this podcast in our discussions. And I do think that it opened up quite a few interesting doors, and we had a really good discussion that perhaps taking some angles that you may not have heard him talk about before. So I'm really happy with how it went, and I hope you enjoy it too. If you'd like to leave me some positive feedback on iTunes, the reviews there are great. Also, if you want to support the podcast via the Patreon, which is patreon.com/SonnyBrown, it's very much appreciated, putting the episodes up early onto that platform. Also, do have a sponsor now, which is scuffle.com.au, and you can buy the official Sonny Brown Breakdown shirt. So very much appreciate all the support you guys are giving me. If you want to send me any feedback, the email, sonnybrown@gmail.com, and the Instagram, Sonny Brown Breakdown, active on that. Without further ado, let's go to the podcast. G'day, John. How are you today, mate?
Hey, good, thanks, Sonny. Thanks for having us on.
Pleasure's all mine. I mean, it is an honor because you are obviously one of the forefathers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Australia, and really, let's say it, one of the dirty dozen, a phrase that you coined, of the first non-Brazilians to get their black belt. So you've really been around since the beginning of what we have come to know as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the wider stage. And your history, of course, very extensive, and we could spend a lot of time talking about that. What I wanted to focus on today was your experience coaching and learning and teaching itself, because you would have taught over the years a lot of seminars and a lot of classes, I'm sure. Do you have a rough estimate of how many seminars you may have run over the years?
Probably just over 2,000 and maybe 27,500 classes.
So we're dealing with a wealth of experience in this area. And I just wanted to start off. You were actually the first seminar that I attended up at Anthony Lange's. You went over X-Guard and we did a couple of drills. And I still remember the details from that seminar to this very day.
Nice.
And I wanted to touch on, when you are teaching seminars or lessons, what would be the reason you would give as to why I would still remember that when there's many other seminars I've been to with lots of details I would have forgotten?
Well, of course, I've got a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
Too much, perhaps. But some of the very basic, fundamental principles behind how I teach a class, some of the very basic things. There's some nuances. There's a lot of nuance. I tend to be that way inclined anyway, toward nuance and paying attention to detail. That's in my nature. And when you do something like teaching a class more than 10,000 times, I'm just going to pick, because that kind of meshes with that myth about the 10,000 hours to get expertise. So when you start teaching 10 or 20,000 classes and you mesh that together with a natural inclination to paying attention to detail, then I've noticed things in my 5,000 class that I didn't notice teaching my first class. So I always debrief myself, Sonny, after every class, even teaching at my own academy. I've got a note. I've got one page of notes for every single class that I've ever taken. We've just done a spring cleaning and 2 of those giant drawers down there, 50 manuals of notes, which my wife prefer. I just throw them away. So as I debrief myself, you teach a double leg this way. And then because I'm teaching so many classes over the years, I've got the luxury of I'll probably teach that same class next week somewhere or here or there. So I say, well, when I taught it that way, as opposed to the other way, I got a better result that way. So I saw it, it's an experiment with 30 people on the mat. By talking about it this way, you get a different result than if you talked about it that way. So that's a very long-term thing that probably is unhelpful for most people, because you've just got to run the 10,000 experiments to get a feeling that you do it this way and that's going to give you a better result than that way. I'm results driven. So I want to see an outcome, and the outcome would be 100% of the people on the mat can do whatever the hell it is. So, and over all that time, I've also put together or cobbled together some basic fundamentals of teaching. And it's some of those things that would have gone perhaps to creating the kind of class that is a little bit easier for people to retain the information. And my first principle is design. So I need to design the class, right? I can't just come on the mat, and I have the ability to do it, but I would not I can't remember when I've last done it, just walked onto a mat, scratched my head and gone, let's do Kiss of the Dragon, or let's do De La Riva backside heel hook. I mean, it shouldn't be about what I feel. Class has got nothing to do with what I feel like doing. So there's a topic and I should design a class. So X-Guard, for example, and I'll probably do a better job now than when I was up there. Sorry, Sonny.
No, that was good.
You probably got a shit version. But now what I would do, it's clear in my head. I know exactly how I would approach the subject of X-Guard, but let's just pick that one. But here's the process that might help some people. I would get a whiteboard. Nowadays, I don't need to do it because the whiteboard's in my head, but I've created a thing in my head where I can visit different spots and pull shit out. But a physical whiteboard, I used to use it. For a while, I used an iPad. And I would write everything that I knew about X-Guard on that bit of paper, or the whiteboard. So you can imagine everything that you know about X-Guard. It's going to be a bunch of different things, right? So you write them all up, irrespective of what they are. You might write 4 things, you might write 8 things, you might write 10 things, depending on your experience. But then here's the first question to ask. What out of those 10 things that you've scribbled up on the whiteboard would you teach me first, Sonny? Like, if you only had 5 minutes with me and you cared about me and you're never going to see me again and you had to pick out of those 10 things, which one? Like, that's a pretty good question. Like, which one would you pick? What book do you want to take to that desert island? Like, you got to think about it. And then you would want to know, well, I would say to you, why did you pick that? That's an interesting choice that you picked that one. Why did you pick it? And then you're going to be able to rationalize that because something drove you to that decision. And so there you've got it. And it might be because, well, if you taught that first, it's going to save problems later with these other things. And some other people would say, I picked that one first. Why? Oh, because I like it. Right. Not so cool an answer. Or it might be, oh, well, that works for me in competition. Or, but you'll pick something first. And then that begs a second question. And you know what it is. Well, if that's first, what's second? What's third? What's fourth? So now you've got at least some kind of order. Now, I'm not going to judge anyone on their order, but they should have one. And be able to rationalize, why did you choose that? And then that's the beginning of design. So if it's designed one way or designed another way, you will get people remembering or forgetting. So that's my first of many, many, many things that I would go to in putting together a seminar on X-Guard or any other subject in Jiu-Jitsu, is the order of the design of the class.
Yep.
That's a short answer.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it after that.
No doubt. Yeah, hopefully we can get into some of that today. One of the things that I'm always conscious of is, when designing something like that or trying to put it into a certain order, sometimes it's more important about what you leave out than what you're actually including for a reason. One of my favorite sayings from Miles Davis, jazz is the notes that you don't play. And it's important when you make that distinction. So when you're looking at that, how much are you weighing up between what you put in and what you put out to make that kind of discrimination on the design?
Well, I'm not swayed by what's popular. That does not come into it. Because if something's popular, it's not that it's popular, that's irrelevant. It might be popular for a good reason, that's much more relevant, because it's functional, or it works really well. Leandro Lowe does his, very simply, his 2 or 3 passes, or one really pass, and then his one main sweep he used to do. Every 2 years he changes his sweep up. So people go, well, you should do that, right? Well, maybe, but what's much more interesting to me is asking a question like, how did he arrive at that? Okay, I'll give you a story that might be better. Caio Terra, we were in his academy a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, and we're having a chat. And we did some training, we did some rolling and stuff, and black belt class. At the end of it, kind of most people left, and Caio and I hang around, and we had a chat for a couple of hours. And he said, is there anything you want to, have a look at? And I said, well, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a bit of a look at some half guard stuff, in particular knee shield. I mean, the reason I chose that because at that time he was doing a lot of that, and he could just chill out, and not do anything, and no one could get past his little knee shield. But so I just picked that, not because I was particularly interested, but because that's what he was doing. So I may as well, he was. So he said, oh yeah, sure, I'll show you some things. Do you want it? And I go, oh, let's do it. So he started showing me some, I'm not going to say weird, it's not weird, but he started showing me something that, what the hell are we doing? It was interesting technique, but I pulled him up after 10 minutes and I said, Caio, why are we doing this? And he said, well, I was hoping that I'd show you something that you'd never seen. And now that's thoughtful of him and nice of him, but completely irrelevant to me. So I said, I would much prefer something else, Caio. And he goes, oh, of course, like what? And my question was a pretty simple one. What was it that got you addicted to half guard? Like what hooked you about half guard? It must have been something. He goes, oh, that, yeah, I've been doing that since a blue belt. I go, let's do that. Right. Because so what got someone in there is quite often, think about it, it has to be powerful. Like that technique, whatever it was that he went, that's my half guard technique, that's much more interesting than some crazy thing that you can pull off only because you can, not because you should, but just because you can. I'm not that interested in it. That would fall in an area, to go to your question, is what do you leave out? That would fall in an area of like dessert for a meal. I can leave it out. I'm not relying on that for the nutrition. I'm up for a dessert, but that's dessert. I make a distinction between dessert and what you need to be healthy. And so a lot of people throw the dessert up there. And no, I want give me the nutrition first, and then we'll talk about dessert later. The foliage in a tree. I want the roots, the trunk, and maybe the main fork. Give me that. And then after that, we go off on all these crazy little tangents. So don't start there. I'm not interested. I am later, once I've exhausted my understanding about the foundation and everything else. So to answer your question, I would leave out the foliage and all those little crazy iterations of iterations. That's it. I would leave that out and focus on the basic idea, the main thing, and maybe the first branching of the idea, because that's what got it started. Without that, none of this foliage would exist. So that's a mistake, I think, if I may say the word mistake, and I'm not being too judgy about it, but if I had to critique someone, that's one of the main things I would find myself saying a lot. You started in some weird variation of the move, and they don't even know why they're doing De La Riva. They don't know why they're doing De La Riva. Why De La Riva? We used to call it standing half guard. You're up, and I've got one of your legs in between my legs before it was called De La Riva, standing half guard. So why the fuck am I doing that? Like, why? Because of this situation. That's why. Oh, okay, because it's about an angle. Oh, I got it. So you start with that and then build on it and then build on it. And then later on, you can end up getting your De La Riva, getting the underhook, pulling the knee inside, going to K-guard and getting the backside 50-50 heel hook. Yay! but don't begin like that. Sorry, a bit long-winded.
No, that's fine, because I mean, you've touched on a very
important topic, of course, which is, you know, like you described, the idea of people just wanting the dessert, which is, you know, is a problem with martial arts. It's also a problem with nutrition. It's a problem in a lot of areas where
I suffer from it.
yeah, it's been lockdown times. I've been enjoying it myself. You know, because people are drawn to those most flashy moves that has taken an athlete countless reps of the fundamentals to be able to do. So there is that inclination to get people's attention and get people engaged by figuring out that you'll just show them the flashy moves and then everyone's paying attention now. Whereas getting them to eat the vegetables is the boring part. So the big question and that everyone wants to know is, how do you make the eating of the vegetables the exciting part and get engagement to get to the dessert?
I think it takes time. And another analogy, which is a useful coaching strategy, use of analogies, is like, are you married or do you have a girlfriend?
Girlfriend.
So what got you there is not what keeps you there. They are two different things. You know, like what got me to look at my wife when I first met her wasn't just it actually wasn't her cute ass. You know, it was the fact that she could kick someone in the head really well. This is a strange thing. But whatever it is, it might be what the girl looks like. It might be that she's funny. She made a joke. It might be she can surf and you surf and she did that wave really well. But something attracted your attention. Whatever that was, that's not why you're there 35 years later. Right? So I make a distinction between what turned your head, oriented your attention to something, and then what keeps you there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I think that's one of the nicest things about, I'll say berimbolo or something, although we could have a big discussion about that, but so I'm not dissing berimbolo, but it plays a really important role. And it's not just the fact that it's another pathway to the back. If that keeps your attention, if that gets your attention and then keeps you on the mat, unreal. So its functionality is irrelevant. An old argument for Jiu-Jitsu for me was it's functional. I've moved on from that thinking because I don't give a shit how functional something is. If you're so bored about it and it's not getting you to training, it's not getting you excited, it's not functional because you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So you need things to keep you there. I'm talking more about the use of dessert, you know, so that might keep you there. And that's very important because you need to be there to do the meat and potatoes, the great stuff, the stuff that keeps you going in the relationship or in nutrition or in jiu-jitsu. So each thing plays a super good role. To talk about fighting, I'll give you another example of a friend of mine in England, a guy called Jeff Thompson. Many of your readership would know who that is, into functional martial arts, and he reduced it all down, and I'm doing him a disservice, but he reduced it all down to just three things. Have a fence, you know, when someone's in your face, ask a question to distract them, to slow down their reflexes, and then knock them out. Pretty simple.
Yep.
Fence, question, smack. It works. You cannot deny the efficacy of getting good at doing that shit. Okay?
Yeah.
However, here's the problem with it. Jeff, where are all your students? Where's your 200 students turning up every night? I'll tell you why they're not there. It's too fucking boring. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's too fucking boring. You need to surround that with a whole bunch of pad drills and this and that's and blah, blah, blah. But every night, disguised in amongst all those funny drills is that. So after a couple of years, without even trying, they're all really, really good at the thing that works.
Yeah.
So that's something maybe you were looking for, but to use the flowery, flashy something, I'm just going to call it interesting, attractive techniques to keep you there long enough, you've still got to do side control.
Got to.
When you do the berimbolo, you've still got to get the back and get your seatbelt grip. So I'm getting you to do the basic things, but I'm just keeping you entertained while I'm delivering the message, like teaching.
Yep.
You can have all the facts in the world, but if you're not delivering it the right way and keeping the students there, it's fucking wasted. So, so there.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, because it's the constant battle, especially when there's so many other means of entertainment that people could take part in these days. They could just pick up their phone and look on Instagram, and that's what you're battling with sometimes to get their attention as to where you want it to be facing. Obviously, they've put the trust in you that you're going to be better in the long run, but there is always those draws on attention. So you mentioned there the ways of disguising the fundamentals with the flash. What is some of the best, practical ways you might go about doing that in your classes?
There's so many ways, but say for example, I want to work on something simple like a seatbelt grip, cross choke, and then go up and do the bow and arrow, like a little sequence like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, for examples, in my advanced class, which is all purples, browns, and blacks,
Mm-hmm.
black belts, is 90% of them would know that particular sequence. They would know how to do a seatbelt. They wouldn't get their hands wrong. They would know how to get the collars and do the hand fight. And then they would know how to transition to the bow and arrow. Might be 20% that didn't know because they're only new blue belts or something. Might be someone that just wasn't there that night that you taught that last 2 years ago. So, right? So there's always, but 80% know it. So I might teach that and then make sure everyone's okay. And then next training session, I want to do it again because I want to, but that now we're getting boring. Hang on, we did that Tuesday. It's Thursday. So what I would do to do it again is just get to the back 2 or 3 different ways. So they think, oh, wow, this is cool. Look, a seatbelt flip over from Turtle. Or I got to the back by doing a double underpass and dumping him on his head and getting his back and flicking him over. So Kiss of the Dragon, Berimbolo, doesn't matter. So I can put the pathways in there. That's kept their interest up. But when they get to the back, then I want that sequence. So I'm really, they're doing what I want. They're drilling the thing that they drilled last Tuesday. They're embedding it. They're taking ownership of it. But I've distracted them with 2 or 3 ways to get to that position. I mean, there's a billion ways to do it.
Yep.
That's an easy one.
No, that's good. So just, you have that core message that you're trying to get through and then just presenting it in a few different ways that will, attention-grabbing ways, should we say. And I guess then from the perspective then of the teacher, that's, what you're looking at to keep those people interested who may have their attention drawn elsewhere. There's obviously some students in the class who have taken ownership of their own learning and will probably not require as that kind of attention-grabbing material to keep their interest. Is there a way that you can help encourage that kind of learning from your students?
It begins with making your bed. So to use a military concept, why do we care that it's fucking 20 centimeter fold in the top sheet and that? Because what's that got to do with fighting? Or what's marching's got to do with fighting? Or how shiny your belt buckle is got to do with fighting a war? What it's got to do with is attention to detail. If you can't get that right, then you can't listen to a command in a stressful situation and then execute on that command. Because you can't even fucking make your bed, bro. So that's why these things are important. And I have always, as long as I can remember, applied a similar idea. So that when people come to my class, I don't care what was happening in their day or where they come from or who they are. When they step on the mat for that hour or whatever it is, this is a different space. And I think that's important because they need to change their mindset because we all come to the mat from a different day and with different stuff in our life. I don't want any of that. This is like, oh, I'm training now. So from the start of the class, and this is beginners, when brand new introduction class, like the first 4 classes someone does at my schools, 4 introduction classes, not 1, they have to do 4. They don't have to do 4, but I'm not letting them join my school until they do 4 classes and I check them out and decide whether they have the capability to learn the way I want them to learn. And they get 4 tries at it. So that's my time to then set up how I want you to behave. Because this is not like your work or Bunnings or your office or your surgery or whatever it is. This is not like that. Open your fucking eyes. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Pretend you're the only one in the room besides me. Don't be staring at the room and think I'm talking to someone else. I'm talking to you. If I say feet together, I mean feet together. I don't mean that. It's my equivalent of make your bed, tie your belt buckle, stand up straight. Because by doing that, immediately their mind, they're going, well, this is fucking different. Wow. He means toes together. He doesn't mean that. He means that. Yeah, I do. So that's different. And now their mind has gone, whatever part of their mind, they're starting to create this world that they're starting to play in, wherever that is, they're going, oh shit, that world's there are ways that I'm expected to behave. There are ways I'm expected to think. Fuck, he wants me to actually think, and all these things. And that's probably for most people quite different from their normal life, unless you are someone in a job that already requires attention to detail and stuff. They might go, oh, this is just like what I do. Fine. But most people know. So the answer to your question is how I begin. I have to train them. I train people how I want them to behave, to interact, because it's a collaborative process. Only works if we're both on board. And I set up the rules, so to speak, of learning. And people are good at it. And I keep them in that intro class for 12 weeks before they get into my white belt class. So in that 12 weeks, everyone gets on board. Like after that, I can teach the fundamentals really easily. And then they have to be a blue belt to get into my actual class, which takes 2 years. Yeah, it's how I set it up. I think it's like if you've got a puppy. If you let it fucking do whatever you want for the first 3 months, good luck trying to train that dog.
Yeah.
That's a terrible analogy. That's a terrible thing. But you get the point.
No, I get the point exactly. It's the best way to encourage the idea of taking that ownership over their learning and to make them receptive to how you're going to teach is just to, from the very outset, set the steps in place that you want them to follow as they continue along their journey, right?
Yes. See, we want everyone to be different. I'm not communist China. I'm not into China. But Chinese people, yeah. The government, fuck that. Just to be clear. There's a distinction to be made. Chinese people, awesome. Government, fuck. But I want as much variety as we can. I want your approach to be very different. So I want that. But there are some constraints, right? Like if I'm coaching, I can't have someone over there staring at the ceiling or laying down like that. I go, excuse me, stop. Clearly you're uninterested. So how about you leave the mat and attend to whatever the fuck it is that is more interesting to you, because you're going to die. Your life is too short, mate. I would strongly suggest if frisbees attract your attention, do that. In fact, I'll fucking buy you one, and then they can either do that or they can fucking pay attention. I'm not harsh. I'm not trying to be harsh or militaristic for the sake of it. It's not about me. It's not even about their respect for me. It has nothing to do with it. It's about outcome. And they are just flittering away their time if they're behaving like that. If you're teaching me something, origami, how to make coffee, I want the maximum amount of value from that interaction as I fucking can get. So if I'm like that, like, what? I'm doing myself a disservice. I'm trying to teach people how to extract the maximum value from the time they have doing whatever it is they're doing. And then that also, of course, has on-flowing effects outside of the mat, because they might apply that in their job and their boss goes, shit, this guy's really good. Like when he's here, he's really here. Promote that boy, so there's that. That would be nice.
Yeah, I think that touches on like really the power of constraints and how finding that expression within those constraints, because of course with no constraints at all, no rules, it sounds some kind of freedom, or then it's very difficult to get things done. And then on the other end there you have too many constraints where it becomes stifling to people. So the example I like to use for this is of course haiku. which it's a form of poetry that is only possible through the constraints that you're given to write it.
Yeah.
And I guess there is that process of finding what those optimal constraints are to place in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I want to know, what do you think are some of the necessary things that have to be there to help people learn?
I was just trying to look up a haiku I wrote the other week. But I couldn't. Take me 2 minutes. That's a good way. I think you put that really well. That's a good way to put it, And it's an interesting topic that you've kind of framed there. I must write something on that. The value of constraints. It's great because it's really easy to misinterpret. If someone wasn't paying attention, that they could just walk away from that conversation and call you a socialist. Or worse. Or worse. We do need that balance, and it's not easy. I mean, if it was fucking easy, everyone would be doing it. Every government would operate that way. If it was easy, and none of this is easy. As you put it, it's a tightrope. Yeah.
To Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just to bring it focused, because of course, it can be applied to anything really, but just the best ones that, as you framed it, to keep people on the mats, is, some of those best constraints to keep people on the mats, to keep them learning the more valuable things.
There are some really simple things. Again, the really simple things are sometimes awesome. And sometimes they're the most beautiful and profound. And it's really easy to be distracted from some of the simple things. Some of the most simple things is, don't be surrounded by your students. Because precisely 50% of them can't see what you're fucking doing. I've seen so-called high-level coaches. They're not high-level coaches. They're high-level performers. They're not fucking coaches. Everyone make a circle. And now I demonstrate a technique. What the fuck is that? Unless you're on one of those things that turns the car around in a car showroom, it's silly. So what I could say is, everyone get that side of me, and then I take responsibility for the way I orient, so you get to see the angle. And then if you need to see the other side, we spin it around so that they see the other side, right? I mean, we can do that. That's a simple thing to say, but that's a mechanical fix. What's much better than that? We get across to our students this concept of taking full responsibility for their own learning. And if that means you've got to stand up and walk 3 meters over there to see the bit you need to see, you should do that. That's much better, because then, it's not fixed by a trick. I will do lots of learning tricks to overcome some of their little problems because they can't figure out to fucking walk over there. So I will fix it because I want the outcome. But I much rather, in my advanced class, no, they will walk, they will move, they will ask a question, they will want clarification if I use a term they don't understand. That's what I want. But that requires time to get them all like that, because that they can then transport that anywhere in the world, any situation, and be great at learning whatever the fuck it is they're learning. But there's a bunch of little tricks, and that's one of them. Get everyone on one side looking at you, and then the instructor turns around. Another constraint is pay attention. Sounds silly, but to make it simple so everyone understands, the way to behave on the mat is to act as if it was just you and I, Sonny. So if you and I were in a conversation about something, right, and you're talking and I started doing this, you would think something's wrong with me. But you put 20 people there, people do that. No way. I'm not putting up with it. So it's simple rule. The way I am on the mat, if you're coaching and there's 20 of us, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to act as if those other 19 people do not exist. So if you say you put a sentence together that I don't understand, I'm going to go, Sonny, sorry, I don't get that. What do you mean by that? If you ask a question, I'll at least answer it in my head. I'll pay attention to you. So that's normal human behavior. In a one-on-one, it's normal behavior. In a group, people turn into idiots, right? We've seen lots of examples of that of late. So try to be an individual. Act like one. So don't go all ADD on me and start looking at the ceiling and scratching your head if I'm talking. If you want to do that, I don't know who you're interacting with, but fuck off and interact somewhere else like that. So I think it's a pretty simple rule. It's normal behavior. I want individual behavior in a group. So that's another constraint that is very useful. And again, off the mat, it will work. If you're in a room with 10 people and some guy's up there talking about, I don't know, Bitcoin, or it doesn't matter, and you're looking at them and asking questions, later on, he's much more likely to give you more info than some other guy who's there sitting back staring out the window. Teachers haven't got time for that shit because they've got a limited amount of energy. Who are they going to give it to? They're going to give it to the person who was engaged, because that's just being basically respectful, right? I'm not saying respect because I deserve it or respect because of my ego. I'm saying, no, the person's interested. So, of course, I'd rather talk to someone interested in the subject than not, because I have not got an endless amount of energy or time. So I've got to apportion it out, and it's not going to be equal. I am not China. It's going to go to the most deserving.
Yes.
All right, so there you go.
Those are the ultimate constraints of time and energy that everyone is really facing, right?
Yes. So try to be the training partner that everyone wants to come to, not the training partner that everyone flees from. If they're all running away from you, maybe there's a fucking reason. So that's a constraint, I guess, in a way, but that's what you want.
Yeah, well, I figure that's kind of the real meaning of it's not how you win or lose, it's how you play the game. When you're in training, it's, you want to play it as a way that everyone wants to play so you can get those reps in. And I mean, you touched on, a big important thing with people kind of becoming bystanders within the class and within everything, because that's just a normal human reaction. There's the thing called the bystander effect, where if something's happening in a crowd of people, someone might be getting attacked. The general assumption is, well, someone else will deal with the problem.
Good point, yeah. Little things like if I go onto a new mat space, the first thing I'll do, if I've never been there, is look at the shape of it. Which way is the mat oriented? Is it longer than wider? Is it square? What I want is 2:1 ratio. So it fits with our viewing, the way humans have evolved to look at the landscape, which is roughly the same proportions as the Avis, the Avis rent-a-car sign.
Yeah.
That was apparently a big study done before they designed that. I mean, it looks like no thought went into it. A lot of thought went into that Avis rent-a-car sign.
Interesting.
It matches the way we have designed to look out into the world. It's that shape. So I'd rather a mat that shape because we're a bit better at that than that. So I look at the mat shape, and then if I'm going to teach, well, I've got to teach into the facing the rectangle. But is there a door there? If the door's over there, I'm not going to have my students looking at that door. They're going to be looking at the wall that's blank. So their attention comes to the instructor, not be distracted if someone opens the door, someone walks past a window, right? So the way that the class faces, again, it's a constraint in a way, but it really makes a difference. Otherwise, every time, the worst thing, you got windows and it's a hot day and it's on Bondi and some chick starts walking past and you're going to fucking lose it. Turn them around. Right. So there's that. Another constraint is what I call traffic. Not in the rolling. In the rolling, all bets are off, of course, but in the learning and drilling part of the class, if we're all going the same direction in the drilling, there is less chance for accidents, and that's for the same reason that we have rules on the road. Like all the cars going that way on this side for a fucking reason. So when the cars are going, otherwise it's like that. So you just have less deaths per year on the mat if you have everyone doing the double leg in the same direction, because the heads are all going like that. Now we may bump heads, but they're all going the same. Aside, it's not that. And also, this is when we're drilling or learning the technique. If we're all doing it in the same direction, it's easier for me as a coach to look at that in 1 second, go, oh, something's wrong with that direction over there. That angle's wrong on the flower sweep. They're pushing backwards. They're not going 90 degrees to the leg to make it roll. I can see that more easily if the traffic's right. If it's all over the place, how can I can't. I haven't got the ability to look at 30 people on the mat in 2 seconds and figure out which one's got the angle wrong on the flower sweep. How the fuck could I do that? I'd have to go around and check each one. And if there's 30 people on the mat, that's 15 pairs. It's going to take me 10 seconds per there. There's 3 minutes. I've lost 3 minutes. It's taken me 3 minutes to do something I could have done in 2 seconds if the traffic was all going the right way. So some people might think of that as a constraint. I don't. I don't think of any of these things we are calling constraints as constraints. I think there's ways to make people perform better.
Yeah, I think that's a really great example with the flower sweep, where someone who's not aware of all the things going on, it just looks like, oh, you're getting people to line up and militaristic type of drilling. But it's actually, there's underlying it is the reason of safety for their benefit, and then also the ability to teach and communicate the information better.
Yeah. If all the cars are going down the same side of the road, it's easier to spot one that's drunk driver. But if they're all everywhere, you'd never find the drunk driver.
Yeah.
It's just a way. It's for me as a coach, as much as it is for their safety and them doing it. It's mostly about, for me as a coach, to be able to say, oh, when they're hitting that double leg, they're not, this person's just driving straight back. They're not cutting the angle, I can see it, and then I can go and fix it. So it's a tool for me to use. So I insist on that, traffic being correct.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. There is those reasons that obviously make sense behind some of those decisions that might be imperceptible to people if they're just looking at the surface level. But of course, there's the thought that's gone into it. That can then give you the confidence to teach in that way. But how important is it for the class for you to understand that there is a reasoning behind all of those decisions that have gone into play? Or do you feel that they should just accept that you've taken the leadership role and they should fall into the line, so to speak?
That's a really good question. And do you know what? No one's ever asked me that question. I'll tell you, I'm not sure is the actual answer. I mean, a lot of this is instinctive for me now, so I don't have to explain it.
Yeah.
But if it's a new, it depends. It's more complicated now. It wasn't 8 seconds ago. So if it's a new group, Sonny, it's a new bunch of people.
Yeah.
Especially if some of those people have instructor roles themselves, which is often the case with me. I might teach in some military setting or law enforcement setting, not just the martial arts setting, and a lot of the people are there, and they're going to run out and try to be better defensive tactics coaches, or, like yourself, you're already a really good black belt, you got other students. So I'm not teaching the way I would teach a bunch of it's a class of white belts. They don't necessarily need to know these things, but I think you should. I mean, it's such a small amount of time for me to now not only tell you what I'm doing, what I want you to do, but now while you're doing it, I may as well spend 30 seconds explaining why I'm doing this like this way. And some of you will go, holy shit, I'll take that. That's pretty useful for me. And then they'll go and do it. I have got employment, not that I'm looking for employment, just to be clear if anyone's listening to this, but I've got jobs and been engaged by people and organizations only because of that, not because of the techniques or whatever drill or whatever. It's because that in the class, I'm telling them why we are doing what we are doing. And that they see a lot of value in that because they're instructors or they're trying to design a program for something, for US Marine Corps or something like that. They're trying to design this program, and the 12 people that I'm coaching and we're all talking about what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it, then they really want to know shit like that. So they value that and they put a lot of value. So some people I will talk about that a lot. I'm less inclined to do that as a white belt. I will probably do it once, like an intro class. I will tell them, not every class, but obviously, once a month or something, I'll take 2 minutes and go, by the way, everyone, just so you know, the reason why we're all doing the traffic thing is so that it gives me a chance to look at you and see where maybe you're off by 15 degrees so I can run over and I can fix it. And they go, oh, cool. So I think people generally, they will follow a rule. Let's call it a rule. It's not really a rule, but they'll follow a protocol. If they're informed, they're more likely to follow the protocol. If they are uninformed, some people will just go, whatever you say, I'm not doing it. And I'll just leave it at that. Or if you don't inform them, guess who will? Some fucking flat earther will. So that's it. I will inform them. And I'll do it every now and again. And I think it works. I've got no proof that it works. But I think my personal style is I'm very transparent in my thinking. I'm sharing my thinking with whoever's there. Some people don't like that. I mean, not many, but that comes with certain problems. Jordan Peterson type problems. Share exactly what you're thinking, you are going to get some enemies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you get for that is a real connection with anyone who values what you've got to say.
Yeah.
So you can be nice and blancmange and vanilla and not upset anyone, but you're also not going to inspire anyone.
Yeah.
You're not upsetting someone, you're not inspiring. So I think you need to take a stand, and not, us, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's worthwhile sharing it. But I'll do that much more if they're professional instructors or have that role. I'll explain the mechanics of the design, why I designed it that way, why we're doing it that way, importance of traffic, all those things I'll tell them.
Yeah.
And I think it works. It is good value in that.
100%. That makes sense. I mean, that part of then inspiring people, and something that you've touched on, is, the lessons that they can learn from martial arts and jiu-jitsu is then having some kind of applicability in their job and rest of how they conduct themselves in life. That's probably you can tailor things to the individual, but it seems that was something that you mentioned that can really get through to everyone as a valuable lesson. How do you think is the best way to go about getting that inspiration to people so that they can possibly make that kind of transformative process through martial arts?
This is a very potent part of what we do as coaches. Now, to be completely transparent with you, I don't care that much. I mean, that's going to sound bad, because it would be so easy for me to say to you, I really care that people succeed in life. Yeah, not really. I mean, not as much as you would like me to care. But here's what irks me. It's a fucking lost opportunity if you don't. That bugs me. It's a fine distinction to make, but I want us all to extract the maximum value out of this hour we're spending together. Why the fuck are you not doing that? That bugs me. Now, part of that is then you should now be able to think like that over here and here and here. Like, okay, today, right? I said to my kid this morning, I'll just give you an example. So MMA, let's look at that. So that's pulling way back, big picture. I like pulling back, but I also like right in. I like both. You need the whole thing. You've got to do quantum physics and astronomy. You can't just fucking live where you are. You can if you want, but if you want to delve, you've got to go. You can dig by going back, and you can dig by going in. MMA. None of us, Sonny, would think, what advice would you give me? I don't know anything about fighting. I saw BJJ, I saw people choking people. I want to do MMA. What are you going to tell me? I'm going to need to do some, hey, sorry, John, but you're going to need to get some fucking hands.
Yeah.
You may or may not need to get some kicks, but at least you better have some leg kicks and shit, some knees. And you're going to need to know about clinching. And you're going to need to know about how to not get taken down. And you're going to need to know how to take people down. And then you're going to need to know how to get back up when you're down and you don't want to be down. And you're going to need to know some submissions. In other words, you're going to need to know mixed martial arts, a bit of everything, some skill sets. And we can argue all day about your focus might be on knocking people out, but you've got to know something about groundwork, or vice versa, or whatever. But we're in agreement that you need a bit of everything. And we all agree. And I go away and I go, I want to invest my money. I'm going to put it all on Bitcoin. What the fuck? Really? No. I'm going to put it all on property because I'm a wog, and my fucking parents, that's what they did. I'm doing that because property's real. Or I'm going to put it all in BHP because I believe in the stock market. Yeah, but bro, China just hates our guts. We went to war with them last night. You just don't know it yet. And so what's going on is they don't want you. They're not going to be buying any iron ore. So what are you going to do with your investment portfolio? My 2 cents is I'm going to have 1% Bitcoin, and I'm going to have a bunch of Qantas shares and Webjet shares and iron ore shares, and I'm going to have a couple of properties over there. I'm going to have some cash in a hole in the backyard, and I'm also going to have some income streams from different things. I'm going to diversify the same way I did for the fighting. Do you know how many people do not see that there's a connection there? They are 100% with us on the MMA thing. But over there, they put all their money in tulips, or vice versa. You know, like investment. Oh, bro, yeah, you've got to diversify. Martial arts, I'm just going to do sticks. Like, what? So it seems to me that it's so easy to say, Sonny, that we can extract value in one area, like design, architect. But then you can't do that with your workout. You're telling me you can design a house that looks like falling water. When you do your fitness, you're just doing fucking kettlebells? Really, bro? You can't work out that? Like, talk to me more about design. Yeah. And then when they start talking about it, they'll go, oh shit, yeah, maybe I can do that. I do not understand, Sonny, why people can't do that everywhere.
Yeah.
I am incapable of not doing that. If you ask me about my garden or outside or anything, it's all going to be the same. The way you think about it underneath applies to everything. You know, as Miyamoto Musashi said, one of my favorite sayings, and you probably know what I'm going to say, to know one thing is to know 10,000 things. Yeah, but that's not what's going on out there. Now, if your question is, how do you get people to do that?
That's the $1 million question.
If you figure it out, please fucking email me.
I hear you.
It's a challenge. It's a constant challenge. I think it's something to do. I mean, you can lead people. I do it not every class, but 1 out of every 3 classes, I'm doing this. I'm telling them, look, here's a way we could think about this over here. Here's a way we could think about. But I don't know. I'm not seeing it play out. I wish the brochure was fucking true. Like, wouldn't it be awesome? Integrity, character, it'd be so good if the brochure was fucking true. But I look at the brochure and then I look at the martial arts landscape and I recoil in fucking horror. Bit harsh, so there you go. No one.
But if you look close enough, there are those things that can get you to recoil. That's for sure. But I kind of asked that question knowing that a definitive answer is probably not possible because it is the $1 million question. But to go back to that, as you mentioned, the thinking out loud, that's kind of the interesting component where those problems arise that kind of can come up.
I think you can start the little avalanche, let's call it, in their head, a little cascade of thinking by saying, okay, and we all do that. Like, so we're talking about armbars, an armbar from the mount, simple thing. But then you realize, but you can also do an armbar from knee right, and you can do an armbar from guard. And I go, oh, wow. You know, that's always, if you remember back when you're a beginner, it was kind of shocking to me. Like, shit, I can do it from the bottom? Like, what the fuck? That was a jump. If I was in space, it'd be obvious, because there's no difference between mount and closed guard in space. But on the fucking planet, gravity skews my view. So I think we all do it to a point, you would expect that I get that we can do armbar. If I can do an armbar here, I can also do it there, and there. And the way the leverage works here, magically, it also works there, and there. You get me to do that. But then if you can show me, what's a relationship between, shin on shin and X guard, and De La Riva and shin on shin and X guard, we can start to see relationships between things that are not immediately apparent. And certainly Jiu-Jitsu it's hard for me to imagine any other martial art that does that better than Jiu-Jitsu. We are seeing relationships between things that we are creating relationships between things that are not apparent and obvious. So we're doing it. It's just that when we step off the mat, it seems to be another level for people to apply that in their gardening.
Yeah, that is the difficult question, right? Because you want that strict boundary of, on the mat, it's a different domain, it's a different territory, where you're allowed to hit people on the mat. Obviously, you go off the mat. There are certain rules of society that is not going to be acceptable, but it's those other underlying lessons that, if they could be transferable, that there would be some value in it.
Yeah, it's certainly, to any degree that I feel my life has worked out really well for me, call that success if you want, but I don't care too much about that. It's only because I'm able to make that jump. Only. Everything I've done is because of the mat. How would I do it? If this was X guard, what would my approach be? fuck, I'll do it like that. And I've become independently wealthy years ago, never need money for 3 generations. So I don't care now about that shit. I don't have to think about something I'm not fucking interested in because I approached it the same way I approach X-Guard. Martial arts, let's say. And then I do the same thing with my exercise, and I do the same thing with the way I go fishing, bushwalking, and other work that I do. I approach it all the same way. I'm congruent pretty much with everything that I do. So I for one, think it's worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good or better way to describe what everyone would know, the idea of getting outside of your comfort zone, which I think a lot of people take to mean, just doing things you don't want to or doing things that you don't like, which can be valuable. But, if you frame it in that idea of doing the things that work in an environment that's safe versus taking the things that work into an unknown environment and trying it there is kind of a good way to, that's a risk. But having that confidence of, okay, I know this stuff works in this comfortable environment, but get out of your comfort zone, try the same stuff that works in another environment.
Yeah, that's really good, yeah. I've got my kid to, he's only 22 years old, but he just likes being on the mat. It's his main thing. But there's some other stuff he's not interested in. But again, the way I put it to him is, there are some things you weren't interested in on the mat, but do you ever do them? Oh, yeah. Why? Oh, because I need to. There's a time where I need to do that. I don't want to do it, but I fucking have to do it. So off the mat, you better buy a Bitcoin. just get one. Do I have to? No, you don't have to, but you got some shares, you bought some Qantas shares and some Webjet shares when fucking COVID hit, and what's going to happen when COVID goes away? They're going to go back up. What should you do? I should buy some. Yeah. So, right? And he's got hundreds of thousands of dollars in his bank account. He didn't give a fuck about it. He doesn't care about it because he's not interested. But one day he will be. One day he'll need to. And just like one day, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to use that on the ground there. So you better put something into it. How about you do some reading? That's still hard for me to get him to do that. But start with something. We all, I guess, have some environment where, will you take a risk surfing? Oh, yeah. But you won't over there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Which is weird because the value that you'll get taking that risk surfing is going to be far outweighed. If you take it over there and that works, wow, the benefit, you're going to be able to buy 20 surfboards. These things are not separate. The illusion is that they're separate, like finances and relationships and health and your nutrition and some hobbies that give you some joy with some close friends that are not on the mat and then on the mat. They are not. They look separate, but they're all interconnected. If everyone's having a bad day with their relationship or they're not eating well, that's going to affect your surfing, or your mat or whatever. It's all connected. So and it shouldn't be just connected one way, like the bad way. It should be, if you're able to get good things here, can some of that bleed into some of these other areas? So I certainly like it when people do that, but there's not enough of that. And when I'm often talking to professional martial arts, high-level, world-class black belts and stuff, because they're people we talk to.
Yeah.
I've often been shocked at how badly the rest of their life is fucking running. You're a world champion, but bro, the guy working at 7-Eleven has got a way better life than you. I do not understand why you can't see that. Think of it like X-Guard.
I like that.
Well, it's a pity. It's a pity.
It's a really good point.
Because your X-Guard's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, don't read anything into this, guys. We are just,
not some X-Guard expert that was a shot at.
it's not like, don't think that I'm talking about Marcelo Garcia.
Oh, that's great. I think maybe then just to take a step back and with those kind of connections and piecing everything together, I mean, my connection with you started training under Anthony Lange, and we were very lucky to do the John Wheel shoot fighting system, which was really an all-encompassing kind of MMA class and style that we were doing. And I guess, how did that really come to fruition that, putting that together at such an early stage of what certainly is the closest thing to MMA as we see happening now is like, well, what was kind of led to that situation where I could go down the road and take a proper shoot fighting class.
Nowadays, it mightn't be considered to be, anything special. But back in 1982, which is a while ago, it was considered to be radical to mix your martial arts. In fact, I got a lot of flack for that from the martial arts, more traditional martial arts community. And when I mean traditional, I'm talking about, everybody like that, because that's all someone was doing, Shotokan, Taekwondo, or they did Jeet Kune Do, or they did, but you boxing, but they did what they did, and you didn't stray. You were a Christian, you were a Muslim, you were a Buddhist, but you didn't stray. Everyone was very compartmentalized, and I was just having none of it. And the reason I was having none of it was because when I looked out into the world, that was not the solution that you're saying you have was not good enough for the problem that was there. The fights that I got into and saw and were involved in Southeast Asia, for example, my God, it was headbutts and elbows and take him down and pull out your knife and stab him twice. And then there's another guy cracking you on the back there with a rock, like spinning back kick. Fuck, I need to know a lot of things here. I was looking at the world. There was a very clear problem when I'm talking about simplifying it, because martial arts shouldn't be just about functionality. No, there's a lot of value in martial arts that's got nothing to do with fighting. And it could be argued that most of it has nothing to do with fighting, because we're not getting into fights. We're actually living a healthy, normal, well-balanced, adjusted lifestyle. I'm not getting into fights. So I'm talking about back in the day. Back in those days, I was all about the functionality of fighting in the real world. And it certainly meant striking, grappling, and ending up on the ground. It certainly meant that, because that's the last 10 fights I had ended that way. So it was a no-brainer to me that I need to do that, and started mixing my martial arts. Even in Indonesia, where I started doing silat, predominantly stand-up fighting styles, lots of different silats. Some that looked like Thai boxing, kicking bags and pads. Others looked very formalized and weird. Others complete bullshit. Others had magical fucking potions in you to try to poison people. Other ones, it was knives and weapons. And so there's a vast array of martial arts over there. And while I was there doing some of that stuff, I was also doing some wrestling with some wrestling schools. So like freestyle, Olympic wrestling. And then when I went into fights, I was using all of it. You get one or two punches of kicks in, and if they were losing, like if you were good at that, like if you were good at elbows and headbutts and whatever, and they started, what would they do? They would fucking grab you. So grappling to me didn't start that I chose to grapple. No, I wanted to punch him till he stopped moving. But when you start doing that to someone, they grab you to make it all go away. Now you're grappling. So guess who grapples? The worst strikers grapple, because they don't want to get punched in the face. So that's what happens. And I went, shit, I'm trying to punch this guy into unconsciousness, but he's fucking grabbed me. I wonder why. Not because he's a grappler. He just wants it to stop. So now I've got to grapple. God damn it. Go to the ground, get on the mount, go to work. So that was my experience. And I was flying in the face of conventional martial arts, and even some of the guys up in Sydney, Walt Missingham, Earl Montague, some of these peanuts, they wrote back. I wrote a little article about we should mix our martial arts in Australasian Fighting Arts magazine, and they wrote back, what the hell would you know in your shorts? They actually wrote the word shorts, yeah, MMA shorts, bro. But in your short pants is what they said. You have no experience, blah, 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 blah. And I go, really? So I wrote back a scathing, like, okay, really? Let me outline this for you. And it never got published in the Australasian Fighting Arts magazine. Never got published, because their friend was the editor. So that forced me to go down to my local printer, get a quote for a 10,000 copies of a 100-page magazine, just so I could write what I wanted to write, and put it out. And 10 issues later, that magazine went out of business, and I was vindicated. That was funny. So that's why Blitz started. that was the beginning of that era. And then, so that's why I got into BJJ, different big story, but that's why I got into BJJ. I wanted to make my ground game better. And then, because I saw every fight I had ended up in grappling. So I need to make that better. And that looked like it was, they'd arrived at that same conclusion, but they were really good. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I better learn BJJ. And then 5 years after that, the UFC happened, 1992. And then it was like, well, yeah, like, you know.
Told you so.
yeah, I should have said that. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But, and then about 8 years after that, some of these people started saying, we teach mixed martial arts. So I was like, yeah. So that's all kind of how it started. And then I became more and more interested in BJJ, not for the functionality, which might surprise some people.
Of course.
But because of the complexity. The complexity of it kept me very interested because it's never ending, as you know. So the simplicity of it is what got me into it. You know, her cute butt and her good round kick in the head, that got me there. But what kept me there was a whole bunch of other stuff. And what kept me to BJJ is a whole bunch of other complexity, much of which has very little to do with the no rules or even the MMA fighting scene. Deep half guards there's no place for it in MMA, but it's interesting. So I think what gets you there and what keeps you there are both equally important. I mean, if they don't get you there, you're not there to understand the complexity. So I think both things are equally important.
I like that. And to wrap things up and tie it all together, because we've gone back to the idea of, you know, just mixing those things together, and you've had that pushback and that resistance that you faced when you were doing it in the early days. And I think there's still areas of the world and of the martial arts world, of jiu-jitsu, where those things could still happen. If people try and change anything, or there's any kind of reformation in any area, people are going to experience that pushback. What would be your advice then, as someone who's gone through it, of dealing with that resistance, or even being confident that you should change anything?
I mean, fundamentals are there for a reason, whether it's surgery, cooking, martial arts. So I'm going to pay much more attention to someone, you know, if some artist slaps together a bunch of paint strokes, a monkey could have painted that, you know, but if they show me their fine art and all of that, and I'm going to be much more interested in what they say about that other painting. So I think it's more convincing if someone's been through some disciplines to black belt, now then they want to reform something, it's much more likely to get legs if they've proven that, yeah, I've done all what you've said, but I've also gone here. I haven't just started mixing things together and trying to create weird dishes, but I can't boil an egg. It's also obviously it's crucial because we wouldn't have an iPhone 11 or whatever the fuck it is. I don't even use a phone. But, you know, we wouldn't. Everything we have is built on top of a previous iteration, which was built on top of a previous iteration, which was built on top of, you know, so we need to push the envelope as humans to be able to make progress. Now, when we do that, there's going to be all kinds of fucking problems. Like, there's going to be all kinds of prices to pay with every experiment that we do. But quite, you know, like, so the greenies will all whinge about, oh, you know, pollution and all of these things. Yes. So thanks, Greta Thunberg. I appreciate it. So that's cool in one way. She's out there and she's young. But what is your solution? If you offered some of that, I'd send her a box of chocolates. I'm not going to send you a box of chocolates right now. But here's what I would say to someone like that, Greta Thunberg, is I admire your passion, but as you get older, you're going to realize that you're going to have to come up with solutions, not just point out problems, which is what part of reformation is. Realizing there's a drama, there's something missing, and coming up with a solution. Now, I want to hear that. Now, if your solution is just go back to what you were fucking doing 200 years ago, that's not a solution to me. No doubt, if we all go back to horses and carts, or we all go back to traditional martial arts, we will have less problems, but we'll also have less progress. So as Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. So I think what gets us into the drama, the trouble, is exactly the same thing that's going to get us out. Science. I've got all solar panels on my house. You know, I've got a 12 kilowatt system. It gives me all the power I need. Yesterday I was down there trying to get my wife to buy the brand new electric Mercedes, but she won't fucking do it. I'm going to have another go today, see if she'll fucking do it. But science will get us all out. Anytime you move away from what you were doing, as you point out, it's a nice way to say it, Sonny, reform, that's going to come with a messy, shitty period. But what made you take that step is exactly what's going to get you to overcome those problems, get a better version, and a better version. So I'm really into that. And anyone who argues against that, I don't care, because they won't be listening to me, because they shouldn't be on a computer, and they shouldn't be on the internet, and they shouldn't be on YouTube, and they shouldn't get on a plane and fly to another country and talk about their bullshit. Because what the fuck is that? Just keep going. Anyway, you can read a lot into that.
I like it. I think that's a good point to finish up on. Just keep going, because that's sometimes all we got to do.
Yep, and we will.
We will.
Because that's who we are. And we'll just get better.
I like it.
And it'll come with shit and drama.
It always does.
But it will just get better. I mean, look at our lives. The worst lives that we have are 20,000 times better than the best lives of only even 100 years ago. So snap the fuck out of it.
John, thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really appreciate it. I'd love to do it again sometime in the future, because I know that there's so much, stories and history and everything that to be talked about. If people wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best ways for them to go around and do it? So just, direct your hate mail. No.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. The best way to contact me is actually through Facebook. I've been getting rid of a lot of people of late. Like, you don't have to say, if you're an asshole in the slightest way on my Facebook page, delete, block. It's awesome, because I'm nearing my 5,000 limit. So I've got to pare away. I'm up for discourse, but not if I think they're doing more. Like, if you're an anti-vaxxer and you come on you're out. Now, to be clear, it should be everyone's choice, in my view. Free choice. But don't be telling the world they should not get vaccinated, because now you're going to be responsible for deaths. But I still think it's your choice. So it's a middle path. But Facebook's the best way. I will always answer every message. If ever I don't, it's because some weird glitch in the matrix where I didn't see it. So I will always answer any email, which is john@bjj.com.au, and message me on Facebook, and that's the way to people to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day also.
Pleasure, Sonny. Thanks very much. Talk to you again.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Until next time, you can visit sonnybrown.net to find out more ways to break it down.